Well, the Foreign Minister Penny Wong has met her new Chinese counterpart on the sidelines of the G20 meeting in India. She faces the tricky task of towing the diplomatic line as Australia looks to improve relations with China. But she also denounced recent rhetoric from Beijing on Russia's war effort. Joining me live now is the Shadow Foreign Minister Simon Birmingham. Thanks so much for your time. It is tricky, isn't it, this diplomatic tightrope, particularly when it comes at a time where, you know, we need our trade sanctions to be lifted, we need our relationship with China to improve, but we also, as a modern country on the world stage, need to make sure that China isn't going to start supporting Russia. Has Penny Wong done a good job?
Well, it sounds like the right messages were delivered, and we have to make sure that first and foremost we stick by all of the core principles that protect Australia's national interest, and Australia's national interest is served by defending international sovereignty, defending respect for borders, defending the international rules-based order and international laws. And so all of that means that making sure we continue to support Ukraine, defend it, call Russia out, and indeed make it very clear to countries like China that they should certainly not be supporting Russia, they should not be aiding or providing weapons, but indeed they should be doing the opposite, and that is putting pressure on Putin to cease this war and this illegal invasion of Ukraine. And that is what we would expect to see and needs to be the continuous message that Australia has. Delivered, of course, in a way alongside clarity that whilst we have those differences, whilst we may have these points to make, yes, we want to make sure that we can also work towards the peace and prosperity of our Indo-Pacific region and engage as bilateral partners successfully where we can. And that's where we want to see these sorts of talks, Penny Wong with the new Chinese Foreign Minister, but now multiple engagements that we've seen by this government with China. We want to see it start to yield results for Australia too in terms of actual movement in abolishing those trade tariffs and sanctions that are in place, the release of the unfairly detained Australians within China. That type of progress is really important to see soon too.
What is your read of the situation? Because we see these carefully worded statements from China about the war in Ukraine, and it talks about both sides needing to lay down their arms, essentially. Now, you know, there is concerns, obviously, in the West that China might actually be thinking about, at the very least, trying to aid Russia's war efforts. What would that mean, do you think? How big of an escalation would that be if China did become directly involved?
Well, it would be a very concerning and very dramatic escalation for China to become involved through the provision of weapons, through the provision of any type of military assistance to Russia. It is in everybody's interest to see this war, this illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine, cease, for Russia to lay down arms and to come to the peace table for meaningful negotiations. And so it is in China's interest for that to happen in terms of what it would mean for stabilising the world economy and for enabling more normalised trade flows and other pressures to be achieved. Equally, to make sure that it is in the interests of all other parties. And that's why China should be doing the complete opposite of providing arms. It should be making sure that it is putting pressure on Vladimir Putin to cease and desist from his activities and Russia's invasion.
Okay, let's bring it back home now. Superannuation, the debate has been raging, and I don't say that lightly. This is something that has people exercise, even if it doesn't directly affect them. Simon Birmingham, we hear this morning that it could be well more than 80,000. Is that just a scare campaign, or do you have real concerns about who this might affect?
Which will clearly affect and impact a growing number of Australians, because Jim Chalmers from the outset has been clear he doesn't want to index the $3 million figure. And so each and every year you can expect to see thousands more Australians captured by this, and indeed analysis at present showing that without indexation, younger Australians are looking at an effective cap well below the $3 million level. But it's the chaos alongside the broken promise around this that is most remarkable. This is no way for a government to make its budget policy. This government has been scrambling around with all manner of different proposals aired. The Treasurer seeking to keep some on the table, the Prime Minister then knocking them out. This measure being announced, but without the PM or the Treasurer able to answer basic questions, such as will those Australians who are impacted by this be able to withdraw money without penalty from their superannuation accounts? Neither of them have been able to answer that question. They don't know how they're going to treat unrealised gains in assets. They don't know how they're going to treat those on defined benefits pensions. They can't answer the most basic questions around a policy that they appear to have just announced on the run as a cash grab to prop up their intent for higher government spending.
So, on the defined benefit scheme, do you think that should be pared back for the sake of fairness?
Well, there should be equity in treatment in that regard, and it's for the government to make sure that in design of this policy that they've brought out, they do provide equitable treatment for different types of superannuation, pension, retirement schemes that operate, and obviously defined benefit schemes sit in that realm. So we'll be looking to make sure that the government can answer those questions effectively and does give full consideration to how, if it's going to go down this path, it does so in an equitable way for people, not ensuring that one class of Australians is more heavily penalised than others who are in otherwise quite similar circumstances.